Hello everyone and welcome to Friday Sews. My name's Deb and this is DB Designs and Sewing Australia. A big thank you to Jen from Today in Jen's Sewing Room for creating this hashtag Friday Sews. Gets all of us sewists together and we can also have a look at what each other have been making for the week. Today I've come to talk to you about my Summer in New York dresses by Seasons of East. First of all, what I'm wearing. I'm wearing a Bridget blouse by Corset. Actually, do I have it tucked in or out? It's actually nice. It comes in at the waist, just like the dress does. So it's a very, very nice blouse, and I'm just wearing it with some lander pants in a very light denim. Now, this beautiful fabric is a Liz Taylor fabric that I bought from the Dahlia Sewceity quite some time ago. And really happy with this pattern, the Bridget dress by Corset, and that's why I went on to make an actual dress. I was really doing the blouse as a tester to make sure I would like it, and I did, so I made the dress. But today we're going to talk about the Seasons of East Summer in New York dress. Now I've made two of these, very happy with them, and I think they are very flattering. Very flattering dress. You can see there's one here on Tessie, and it has a side zip. So the zip is actually supposed to come up well, so you can see the zip finishes here on mine. Actually, if I put my arm in the sleeve, it might be easier to see. So the zip finishes here on mine. The zip is actually supposed to finish up here, but I did not really want a zip in my armpit. So instead of going with a 12-inch zip, I went with a 10-inch zip, and it's still quite easy to get on and off. Now it's very close fitting into your neck, this dress. I will insert photos as I go. But I have seen that some people, because basically the seam, when we look at it is very close to the quite a narrow neck on this dress, and I have seen some people have pulled their top part section back a bit and gathered this section. Not something that I would do. I actually really like it that it quite hugs in quite close to your neck, but I did have to take this up, I think 2 inches, to be able to wear it to anything where you might be exposed. So I actually did my center front seam 2 inches higher than what was in the pattern. So this front and this front, well, this one originally started down here. That was its finishing point. And when I put it on, you could not only see my bra, you could see my boobs as well. So that wouldn't be very appropriate to wear it to some things that I may want to wear it to. So I took the seam up higher in the center front, just something probably to try on when you're creating Seasons of East dress. And even when I did the toile, I did a toile in a 14, and I'm so glad I did because it was way too small. I actually needed a 16 in it, and I'm not sure what their other patterns are like. Actually, I'd like to use some of their other patterns and see if these are, yes, in fact, my bust is a 16 in this, and this is very true to size. It's got no room in it. But what I was surprised at was in the toile, it was really tight in the waist as well. Whereas I am really, in the Seasons of East patterns, according to their measurements, I am 16, 14, 12. And I made an all over 16, and it fits perfectly everywhere. You wouldn't want the skirt any tighter, especially when it's made out of a viscose, because it's just you know, too likely to tear. And remember, it's got like little tiny pleats in the front, it's got darts in the back. You don't want to put any stress on any of those sections. Very small fitting, so just be aware of that. Please do a trial to make sure you get the correct fit. So I suspect if you if you're pear shape, which is the opposite shape to me, you may need to size up the skirt section of it depending what fabric you use. Gabrielle from the Cloth Edit had said that it was a very slim fitting skirt, and she was right. It is, because it fits me in the 16 when my measurements are only a 12. But it does have the amount of ease. Now, the amount of ease in the hips is only 1 inch, which is not really very much ease through the hip line. And the amount of ease in the waist is 4 inches. Well, mine didn't have 4 inches of ease in the waist at all. And the amount of ease in the bust is 5 inches. So all I can recommend is that you do a trial so that you're not cutting into really precious fabric, which is what it was, because I really love the Copra Corsage, and it's in the purple. Now, this fabric was from the Jewel of the Nile Deluxe box from the Dahlia Sewceity. And see, it's actually got like a gathered back. I will be inserting photos everywhere that it goes. And it's a really quite pretty. And this mannequin would be, she's a very similar size and maybe slightly bigger than I am. Certainly a little bit bigger in the bust than I am, by about ½ inch, I think. But as you can see, you need that much ease in a viscose dress. If it was a linen dress, you could probably get away with it being a bit tighter because it's a more solid type of fabric. But yeah, very, very happy with this dress. Now I've just popped Neptune's Daughter on the mannequin, and as you can see, it's got a bit of ease in the hips. This is a bit tighter fitting on the mannequin than it is on me, but it's still very, very similar, and I like that amount of ease in there. It's got an invisible zip. Now, I'm a person that eliminates closures if possible. If I can get away without, appalling hair, if I can get away without putting a zip in or without actually making real buttons with buttonholes and just sewing it up and sewing the buttons on so it gives the same effect, I will do it. But this, there is no way you could get this dress on without the zip. So here's my invisible zip. So it is different than inserting invisible zip into something else because it's on a curve. So you imagine that there's a side of your dress like that while your hips come out and your waist goes in. So you can see that it goes in there and out here, and that is where you're putting the zip. And they actually wanted you to put the zip up into this curve up here under the arm. So it would be like up here, but I had mine down there. I could still easily get the dress on. But sewing an invisible zip into a very curved area is not always a fantastic experience. Now, when I sew an invisible zip in, I first of all sew one side, as you do, but I sew it on the outside edge of the zip. And what I mean by that is I sew the zip here as well as what I would call in the ditch, which is how you get the closure to look like a seam. So first of all, I place the zip where I want it to be, then I stitch it on not really the outside edge, the middle edge of the zip fabric, and that way I know that's where I want it to be. And then I stitch that side in, you know, in the ditch. Okay, previous to that, I have pressed open my invisible zip a little bit. Now, these are just invisible zips from Spotlight. Not my, I think they're birch. Not my favorite sort of invisible zip, but I did not have a purple one, and believe it or not, I did not have a navy one that I would usually buy from M. Reich, because I much prefer the YKK invisible zips, because they're on they're really on a cotton and not on a nylon. You can see that this type of zip, in fact, I'll show you some that I have. So you can see the difference between types of invisible zips. This is one from M. Reich, and so you can see the type of fabric that's on. And this is one that will be a birch one, so from Spotlight. So you can see how that's sort of nylon and much more flimsy compared with the ones from M. Reich, which is a YKK. And I can see it's a YKK because it's stamped on the back of it. This doesn't say what it is, but I do believe it's a birch. Now, you can get YKK zips in a lot of different strengths, because you can get wedding dress invisible zips, and you can get ones called heavy fabric invisible zips, whereas I find at your normal fabric store, they mainly only carry the one type of invisible zip. As you can see, I've got millions of zips, but they're all for different things. And oh yeah, it is a birch one. So you see that that's a birch invisible zip, and it's very, like, I like the fact that it's sort of a bit see-through, so it's not taking over your garment, but I just don't think it's as strong. I much prefer a really strong invisible zip. I think invisible zips are under a lot of stress. It will often be in a fitted garment. So I managed to get them in first time. I did not have to unpick any of it from anywhere, and I'm really happy with how it went in. But remembering that it is on a curve. So even if you have to tack it in first and then sew it in, it's worth the trouble and it's worth the time. And then when you do the second side, what's really important is that you are matching up that seam. So it's probably one of the hardest things when you're inserting a zip, even a lap zip, is that when you've got a waist seam and the zip's going through the waist seam, that you get that perfectly, that join across the waist to be perfectly aligned. Now, when I do mine, I lined it up. I've marked it all with marking pens and all that sort of thing, so I know where I need to sew. And then on the outside edge, I am stitching it. So I know that that zip is going to be in the right place. Then I can do a whole stitching line. And when I say whole stitching line, I probably did that. I usually sew in a 2.2, 2.4 length. I probably did that in a 3.5 length, because that way if I had to take it out, it's not going to stress the fabric. You know, it's easy to unpick, all that sort of thing. So just something to remember when you're inserting invisible zips, that you can sew on those outside edges of your zip to get it lined up. Obviously, you have to do one side at a time. I would not recommend that you sew the outside edges of both sides. You really have to do the sides very individually for them. Don't line up both. Sometimes with a lap zip, you can get away with sewing down one side, sewing across the bottom, and sewing up the other side all in one go. An invisible zip is not like that. I would do it separately. And this is not the way I usually sew an invisible zip in, because I actually sew an invisible zip in usually after I've stitched up the bottom part of the seam, because it's usually at the very, very top that the join is. It's not a halfway seam. It's something that comes, you know, like all the way to the top or the bottom. That's just my preferred method. And if you wanted to see that method, Kenneth D. King shows you how to do that method. But you do have to have a tool to pull the zip back through onto the inside, because it sort of ends up on the outside. If you watch his video, you'll know what I mean. Or I'm able to get that zip back in through. And he's always using a much longer zip than what is required, and then just stitching off the end and cutting it off. So I think that method of an invisible zip gives a much more seamless look on the hip. Mind you, that one's pretty good. The zip actually ends there and you can't really see where that is. So you notice that sometimes when you do an invisible zip, you get that bump on the hip, and not so much in my case, because things are never usually as tight in the hips. But if you've got a bigger bum and hips, you really want to get that smooth transition. And I have before sewn it nearly to the bottom and then done hand stitching to stitch the rest of it in, so that it was much more seamless, because sometimes it's hard to get, you can't really get the foot of your machine in there. That's the problem. You can't get the foot of your machine up to where you need to have it to get your invisible zip in perfectly. So that's my take on the Seasons of East Summer in New York dress. Very beautiful dress. Very, very flattering. Very flattering. I don't know whether it's because it's quite fitted, and I've previously been making dresses that probably only fitted through the bust and the waist and not in the hips. But I'm very, very happy with them. Very happy with them. And I would actually like to make one in a heavier fabric. I think in a linen, it would actually look really beautiful as well. So, highly recommended. Make sure you do a toile. Please do a toile. And I'm not a toile doer. You know, I do toiles when I sew for other people, or people are paying me to make them things. So that's really important. Or if I'm making a pattern. If I'm making a pattern from scratch, I've probably done 4 toiles. The Mother of the Groom dress that I've actually got finished, I only had to make 1 toile because it was quite a loose fitting dress, and I was able to make the pattern, make the toile, and then pin it in where I needed to pin it in. So I will show you all of those things. I have practically finished the wedding dress. It's just got to be tried on tomorrow when she's coming to pick it up, and I will trim some more of the tulle off the bottom, but I have trimmed a lot of tulle off the bottom. I think you can see a whole lot of it bunched up there on my ironing board. That's what I've cut off. So I'm going to be doing that. And what I've got cut out and ready to sew is the Fernbird top by the Sewing Revival. And if you haven't seen the Fernbird, you need to be looking at Stacey. I will link her channel down below. And I've got cut out the Inner Stress by Style Arc, which I'm actually quite eager to make, because that's sort of a bit of a transitional dress, because it's made out of Ponte, so it's not ultra summer dress. And the Be Mine balloon sleeve top. So the top that everyone's making, that everyone's bought the pattern for, was this absolutely gorgeous top. In the En Plein Air fabric, which is a cotton Brody Anglaise. And I've also got cut out the flounce top by Sewing Revival, and I'm just making that in a green linen that I had in my staff, just a piece that was left over. and I need to make a toy box and a cushion. Now this is fabric that I have printed by Spoonflower, and this is a very heavy canvas, and I actually put very heavy interfacing in it and lining in it, and I make a baby's toy box, so a soft toy box, so when they fall on it they're not going to split their head open. And I also make them a matching cushion. So this is red setters, because these people have red setters, and because I'd made one for my daughter when she was pregnant with images of their dogs on it, which is a Wairama. They're probably not saying that right. I'm always saying it wrong. But so I make a cushion and a toy box. So I'll show you that when it's finished. And I'm going to make a skirt and a top for Phoebe for her birthday, because her labels have not arrived yet. I had labels printed for her that says made by Phoebe, but hopefully they're here by her birthday, which is towards the end of October. So that's been my sewing week. I will come back to you. There's part of the wedding dress that's nearly finished. Ooh, there's the mother of the bride's dress as well. Sorry, mother of the groom's dress as well, which is in a viscose. And yes, as I said, very, very happy with the Summer in New York dress. Highly recommended. Please do a trial. I'll talk to you all shortly. Everyone have a great sewing week. Bye.